Anyway, let's move on to the big question here. Is there any way to save the big three automakers? And if we don't, are the political, are the social consequences too dire? 61% of the people in a CNN opinion research poll oppose government assistance for the major auto companies. Joining me now, some of the best political minds around. Eamon Javers, financial correspondent for the Politico, joining me tonight. CNN contributor Stephen Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard and New York Daily News columnist Errol Louis, also morning host for WWRL Radio here in New York. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Campbell.
Let me start and just get your take, Eamon, on what you thought today of the arguments that were laid out.
Well, I'll tell you, it looked to me like a lot of people are playing Russian roulette up on Capitol Hill today, as Chairman Dodd pointed out this morning. But not everybody's going to win this game of Russian roulette, and the question is who. And just to put this in a little bit of context for you, Campbell, take the market capitalizations of all three of these companies, the total value, what they're worth, it adds up to something on the order of about $16 billion, and they're asking for $34 billion. So they're asking for more than twice as much as what all these companies are worth put together. That is a big ask, and it didn't go over very well with all of the senators up on Capitol Hill, including Senator Shelby, the ranking member, the Republican on this committee, who came into the outset and said, hey, I'm not for this thing, I'm not going to be for this thing, no matter what you say here. So it's a very, very tough road for these automakers right now.
Errol, let me read you a little part of editorial out today from the Conservative National Review. It's saying, quote, a bailout for the big three would only postpone their day of reckoning, at which point they would be back for more money. Do you think the CEO said anything today to convince Congress that is resistant otherwise?
No, I don't. And I think the National Review is right. I mean, you know, going on in the background, GMAC, the financing arm that has been failing itself, it's got the lowest possible rating from Moody's. They've been quietly trying to convert into a bank. You know, there's just so that they can get some bank bailout money and sort of try and do through the side door what these folks were trying to do in the front door. I mean, it's a mess, and there's no reason to believe. I mean, I think the point is well taken. Congress could buy the company a couple of times over for what they're asking for, all three of the companies. It might not even be such a bad idea, but we've got to get outside this narrow box of gimme, gimme, gimme that they've been presenting on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, Errol, let's not give them any ideas, please. We don't want Congress to buy them at this point.
But Steve, let me ask you that a lot of Republicans are quick to say, you know, let these guys go belly up. But that means millions of people out of work. You know, a devastating impact in many ways on the economy as a whole. You've seen the trickle-down effect or how widespread the effects of that would be. Not to mention the lives of these people. I mean, this is a big chunk of our country that would just be devastated by this.
Yeah, I think Republicans, just as a practical matter, have to be very, very careful about how they make their argument, though I think they're making the correct argument for the reasons that Errol and the editors of National Review have laid out. But, you know, it's one thing to say, look, we need to let these companies fail or need to lead them into managed bankruptcy or what have you. You need to actually explain to people what that means, and you need to explain why that's happening and why the companies have failed. And I think one of the things that Republicans haven't done very well lately, especially on this issue, is lay out a narrative. Tell people why they have the views that they have and tell them why these companies should fail.
Eamon, you know, Democrats seem particularly torn at the moment. And you've got President-elect Obama, at least in public, being pretty non-committal lately. With the time of the essence here, there's a sense of urgency. I mean, should he be more aggressive, taking a stand and being more out in front on this?
Well, at some point, people are going to start to say, hey, wait a second, you're the president-elect. You're the central political figure in this country at this point. Where do you stand on this thing? He had a statement today saying that he thought that these plans were a little bit more constructive than they had been last time around. Last time he said he was surprised that they made such a bad performance. But where does Barack Obama really stand on this bailout? How much money would he support? What kind of conditions would he put on? He's not really out there making speeches about this every day or at all. And people are going to start to wonder, where is the president-elect here? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, let me interrupt you, because they are already being more than wondering sort of quietly. They're being pretty frank about it. This is Barney Frank, Congressman Barney Frank, on Obama today. He said, quote, at a time of great crisis with mortgage foreclosures and autos, he said, he says, talking about Obama, we only have one president at a time. Barney Frank says, I'm afraid that overstates the number of presidents we have. He's got to remedy that situation. I mean, Errol, there's some frustration there. This is a Democrat criticizing the new.
It's a pretty good line, but unless they want the White House running the congressional agenda on this and every other matter, I think they should be a little bit more realistic. I mean, they have now 47 days to do what they can as a co-equal, independent body of government. If they can't, then that's another story, and then the president can, and it is his role to step in. But if what they're saying is what they want to do is shift this and make sure that they're not on the record as having approved this very unpopular measure, you know, that's a non-starter in politics. This is going to be unpopular. I think, though, they have to get used to the idea that 61% of the country can believe that they don't deserve a bailout, and I think the same percentage can say, well, we're going to have to grit our teeth and do something anyhow.
All right, stand by, guys. We're going to talk more about this. I want to shift the discussion a little bit. At today's hearing, there were complaints about the government bailing out bankers and white-collar workers, but not being willing to do the same for blue-collar auto workers. When we come back, I want to ask you if we're resorting a little bit to class warfare in this debate right now. Then a little bit later, a CNN exclusive. For the first time since the Mumbai massacre, the nanny whose extraordinary bravery saved a little boy's life as well as her own. She's going to tell us this incredible story. And so is this another amazing story. A hero dog trying to save another injured dog. You can see it right there. We're going to have the full story when we come back as well.
We are asking extraordinary things of our witnesses today, something that we didn't ask of bankers when they came in front of this committee, or more precisely, did not come in front of this committee. We didn't ask that the CEOs of the banks drive to town in a Wells Fargo armored truck. We didn't ask the CEOs of the banks, each of which was asking for, each of which was given $25 billion. We didn't ask for them to appear before us. We didn't ask them to come up with a plan on how they were going to spend the money.
Senator Sherrod Brown raising a troubling question when it comes to bailouts. Is there a double standard at play? Wall Street didn't have to beg for a bailout. Why are the car companies down on their knees? We want to bring back Eamon Javers, Stephen Hayes, and Errol Louis once again. And Steve, talk about this. I mean, some people see class warfare here, white collar versus blue collar. When Wall Street had its meltdown, federal government threw money at the problem, no questions asked. Today, you got the auto companies in a similar position, and they're having to submit detailed proposals and plans. What message does that send to Americans?
Well, I mean, look, as somebody who is skeptical of a lot of these bailouts for both white-collar and blue-collar workers, I think Sherrod Brown makes an interesting but I think ultimately demagogic point. He's fond of saying that, you know, what we're doing now is bailing out people who we're happy to bail out people who shower before they go to work, but not happy to bail out people who shower after they get home from work. And it's a good point, it's a good line, but ultimately I think it fundamentally misunderstands the problem. The reason for the bailout of the banks, if you believe the people who argued for it, was because we needed to unfreeze credit, you know, among other things. We needed to keep this sort of the circulation of the body going, and otherwise we would be facing potentially the collapse of the financial system. The automakers are a different deal altogether. It would be more akin, as one person put it to me, as losing a foot. You know, you don't want to do it, but it's not like the patient would die without the circulation flowing. Is
that it, Errol? The bottom line is saving the banks is just more important to the overall economy than saving automobile companies.
There's an argument to be made for that. On the other hand, I think that the senator is kind of missing the larger point that this ship sailed a long time ago. It sailed to India, it sailed to China. I mean, I hate to inform him that this country has for many years been picking winners and losers among sectors, and manufacturing has consistently been a loser. It's been outsourced, it's been de-incentivized. All of the incentives have gone to other kind of sectors. And so, you know, it's really late at this point to say, my goodness, we're not treating manufacturing very well.
I get all this, and not to suggest that you guys sound a little heartless to me, but I mean, here's the bottom line. We're talking about millions of people without jobs, with no hope for getting jobs in any other form in this part of the country. Aren't we going to be paying for that regardless? I mean, you know, be it welfare, be it health care costs, be it, I mean, ultimately, are we not writing a gigantic check by letting all these people go?
Well, that's exactly right, Campbell, and you sound a little bit like some of these auto guys today. They're saying, hey, wait a second, this has huge ramifications, and blame us. You know, we made mistakes, they came out and said today, but this has huge ramifications for the rest of the economy. They're talking about millions of workers who depend on these companies for their jobs and for their livelihoods and pensions. And lawmakers have to consider that as they make this decision. They can't just throw the big three over the side. That's why I think ultimately this money is coming to the big three in one form or another, whether it's this month or in January once the Democrats come in, because no politician is going to want to be the guy who voted to put GM out of business. It's just not a tenable political vote ultimately, and especially after we spent $700 billion on the financial industry, we can't spend $30 billion on the automakers. That's just not going to win politically. But it's a hot potato right now, and they're all trying to avoid having to make the tough call.
Yeah, and guys, we got to end it there, unfortunately. But Eamon, Steve, Errol, I think you're right. Politically, they're going to do it kicking and screaming, but I think they're going to do it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, the panel tonight. We're going to turn to something a little less grim, shall we now? Pastor Rick Warren is here tonight. He's got a new book out talking about Christmas and spirituality. We're going to see if he can lift our spirits. And we're also going to get his take on what he thinks of the president-elect and the job he's doing so far during this transitional phase. Also in the political daily briefing, why Oprah Winfrey thinks she's getting the cold shoulder from Sarah Palin. And tonight, for the first time, in her own words, the story of the nanny who saved a 2-year-old boy from terrorists in Mumbai. You are not going to want to miss this.